This sequel is a near-carbon copy of the critically acclaimed Crow movie. The difference is that it's supposed to take place in the future, but everything that made the first Crow mesmerizing comes up flat in an unnecessary sequel. The outcome of this film led Sean Connery to retire from acting. It was essentially an Avengers-style movie, but set in the 19th century with English accents. Released the same weekend as Pirates of the Caribbean, The Curse of the Black Pearl, it ended up being a massive flop. Why make movies about the villains? Hollywood seems to just put famous villains' names in a hat and draw one out and pump out scripts. Morbius is a low-level Spider-Man villain who gets in an interesting movie starring Jared Leto, who played an uninteresting Joker. In an effort to cash in on Superman and the fame of Richard Pryor, Warner Brothers produced one of the most lifeless, unfunny, and terribly bad superhero movies of all time. There isn't even a major villain, and Superman has a lot of them. Rather, the villain is a greedy CEO. Pryor looks completely out of place in a movie that's about Superman, not slapstick comedy. Imagine doing a superhero movie on a budget of $3 million, well, they did back in 1990. Captain America's first trot out to the big screen was, let's put it lightly, amateur. The costume looks like something you can buy at a costume store. The script, well, that's another matter. Hammy in every way, Sylvester Stallone plays Judge Dredd in an ambitious movie that is too similar to a movie Stallone did a few years earlier, Demolition Man. Dredd and his motivations are not really something moviegoers can get behind. Why anyone would greenlight a movie that Jim Carrey made famous without Jim Carrey is plain stupid. Well, Son of the Mask is a clear example as to why you don't. The Carreyless film grossed a mere $40 million, nothing compared to the $350 million the original Mask earned. Unlike the first two Fantastic Four movies that came out a decade before, this attempt at the classic comic book team is dull, joyless, and way too serious. This film should have gone through a lot more rewrites before being put out. The primary aim of giving Barbed Wire an R rating was to provide male teenagers with the opportunity to see Pamela Anderson in an exposed state. The movie gives that away in the first 5 minutes, then you are left with the worst acting you can see for 2 hours. My God, the picture we used says it all. Shaq in a steel armor suit. Okay, this is a superhero movie, even though you might not know it, but Steel is a Superman character that in the comics filled in for Superman after his apparent death in 1993. Some studio executives thought it would be a great idea to take the character, remove the Superman element and put Shaq in it. The movie was a disaster. Shaq was terrible and it flopped. The special effects are really bad, the script almost completely not interesting. Supergirl could have been a big movie, but it was not taken seriously as the formula seemed just copy and pasted from Superman. A ridiculous and bloody take on the Punisher character. It's shocking to think that the leads of this movie were pivotal actors on 2 of HBO's best series, Rome and The Wire. Yet Warzone is slapsticky and excessively bloody. The plot is as pointless as the movie. It seems that since the first X-Men movie we have been bombarded with superhero movies of every kind. Green Lantern, a really cool DC superhero, is a hard one to pull off for moviegoers. In 2011, Ryan Reynolds starred as the Green Lantern in a convoluted movie that if you were not a comic book fan, it was hard to follow or care what was going on. The film crashed at the box office amid meager reviews and proved that just because the main character wears tights it does not mean it will equal big bucks. Ryan Reynolds redeemed himself in the superhero genre in Deadpool. Nicolas Cage sleepwalks as the demon motorcycle rider Ghost Rider. The dialogue is hammy, the plot pointless, and the acting morbid. Another clear sign that not all comic book characters are interesting for the big screen. In one of the biggest strikeouts in DC Comics and Warner Brothers history, Batman and Robin was a mess. From the bad nipple suits and Arnold Schwarzenegger being paid $20 million to say the worst puns ever put down on paper. This movie is so bad you have to watch it and then burn it. Another franchise that started so well and has ended up in reboot limbo for sure. X-Men. Apocalypse was a bad movie. Although it grossed a lot more than other X-Men movies, it still did not generate the revenue needed to be considered a hit. The movie was panned by critics and comic book fans alike. It is considered one of the worst comic book movies ever made. Coming off of the flaky Daredevil movie starring future husband Ben Affleck, Elektra takes itself too seriously and flounders. The film is not thrilling nor is it interesting, it was a big strikeout. The Dolph Lundgren version of The Punisher was one action scene after another and by today's standards pretty cheesy. It was a worthy attempt to mix the action films of the late 80s with the comic book world but came up flat. Trying to use the formula that made Sin City a box office hit, the spirit comes off as way too incoherent and flat. It really was way too stylized despite an A-list cast that included Gabriel Macht, Samuel L. Jackson, Sarah Paulson, Eva Mendes, and Scarlett Johansson. The first attempt at Suicide Squad in 2016 was a colorful, fun, but ultimately useless movie that served as a buffer between Justice League movies. Margot Robbie's Harley Quinn is memorable, Jared Leto's Joker, not so much. Did Superman return? He did in 2006, although the film has been lost in the sands of time. After the success of Batman Begins, Warner Bros. And DC Comics wanted to revive Superman, and got Usual Suspects and X-Men director Bryan Singer to lead the revival. Singer and the writers intelligently did not want to do a reboot, rather a continuation of the original Superman movies. Basically, it's Superman 3 if you count Superman's Eye and 2 from the Christopher Reeve era. After a promising opening day weekend, word got around that the movie was slow, too slow, and the film did not reach the expected numbers needed to be considered a success. The sequels for this series were dropped immediately and the next version of Superman would have to wait until The Man of Steel in 2013. The film has a good premise, and tried to do its best to revive the Superman character established in the first movie, but the production value was grossly poor and the film looked aesthetically bad. How Christopher Reeve and Gene Hackman got through this movie is beyond us. This movie could have been huge, but it was too watered down. Spawn was an immensely popular comic book character in the 1990s, the film does a weak job of playing on all the themes of the book. One of the few movies that deserves a remake. Useless in every way, instead of giving Jonah Hex an Unforgiven feel, the film goes wild wild west and is horrid from beginning to end. The film's producers knew it was so bad they cut it to 81 minutes. Megan Fox is terrible in this film. Halle Berry cannot save his mess of a movie that has nothing to do with Selina Kyle. In fact, this Catwoman is of no direct relation to anything Batman. It's just a poor excuse of seeing Berry in spandex.